You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all the news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here at AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
We've dubbed this week's episode Peter Hates Technology.
Absolutely. I think this intro is longer than the Conor Mcgregor fight this past weekend.
Oh, yes indeed. 13 seconds, but we're not ready to talk about that just yet. We've got 3 shows to get through.
This was the 3 days of rage and a lot of fights over a short amount of time, and I think because as a result of that, Stevie actually skipped the pay-per-view this past weekend for WWE.
No, oh, you mean, yeah, wrestling? Forget about it. I didn't skip any of the UFC.
No, but you skipped TLC.
Yeah, gladly. Who even thought that was even going to be anything good? Nobody.
Well, let's just start with the first one of the 1 and 3 here. UFC Fight Night 80, Paige Vanzant against Rose. What was her nickname?
Thug Rose.
Thug Rose. Right. And she proved that, oh boy.
She was straight up thugging for 5 rounds of that fight.
I think someone did the Thug Life video where they paused the end of the fight and put the sunglasses on her.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Alright, so Paige Vanzant got beat, first loss in the 5th round, rear naked choke. The term, her face looked like hamburger, pretty accurate on this one.
Right, and not to mention the fact that she got out of several submissions that realistically she shouldn't have gotten out of because her arm got twisted out and behind her to the point it looked like it was going to break something in it, or her elbow would be dislocated, or God knows what would happen to her.
I thought at one point we were going to hear a snap.
Yeah, it was one of those tap or snap moments. And the fact that Paige Vanzant didn't tap, it was like, wow, she has incredible heart. And then the next thought you have is, wow, she probably just seriously jacked up her arm.
At the post-fight press conference, she was crying, and, you know, you gotta think, she's very young in the sport. She's got lots of room to improve here. It's her first loss. Yes, it's sad, but she takes a lot from this loss, and she'll become a better fighter because of it.
Right, and she took a fighter that came in on a shorter notice. She didn't have as long to prepare for Rose as she had been preparing for Calderwood. And honestly, we said it before when we had Brad on the show, it was a much tougher matchup for her, and that's exactly how it played out because Rose is just relentless, constantly attacking. She's not the measured fighter that Calderwood is, who just stays and picks her shots when she can take them. You know, Rose brought it to her in a way that she probably didn't expect.
No, and, you know, Rose steps up in the rankings, although I don't know by how much, because she beat an undefeated fighter, but, like, what do you do with Thug Rose now?
Obviously, it's going to be either a rematch for her, or there's going to be, you know, a number 1 contenders fight for her, because there's literally nowhere else for her to go. She's number 3 right now. Ahead of her is Esparza, who she lost the Ultimate Fighter to, and ahead of both of them is Claudia Gadelha. So, like I said, it's either a number 1 contenders match or a rematch, one or the other.
Let's move on. Michael Chiesa beating Jim Miller via submission in the 2nd round, rear naked choke at 257.
Chiesa, and yes, one-sided, pretty much blew through Jim Miller in a way that we rarely ever see Jim Miller get dominated like that.
I don't know, I don't want to say curtains, but, oh man, it was heartbreaking to see him lose this one.
Yeah, it kind of goes against the narrative that Miller has been trying to make himself, where he says, I'm not washed up, you shouldn't listen to all these critics of mine on the internet, they don't know what they're talking about, and yet 3 out of his last 4 fights, he's either not looked good or been beaten badly. The only really good fight that he had was a split decision, which could have gone against him, and then he'd be 4 losses in a row. So it's not that Jim Miller is a bad fighter. It's just maybe time is finally catching up to him after over 30 fights and being 32 years old. He could take a year off the sport, reinvent himself, and still come back, but right now it just doesn't look that good.
Sage Northcutt against Cody Pfister, and this fight didn't last long in the second round as it ended at 41 seconds via guillotine choke. So a lot of chokes in this fight, in this card.
Yeah, well, this was kind of a strange fight because for the first 3 minutes of the first round, Pfister took him down and sat on him and did virtually nothing. And when Sage finally got it back to the feet and started to get in his offense, it was suddenly no longer Pfister's fight. He won 3 minutes of the first round, but the last 2 minutes he took a vicious beating. And in the second round, Sage Northcutt just said, enough's enough, I'm going to finish you.
It's like he flipped the switch.
Pretty much, yeah. Once he got up, he was like, screw you, I'm not being taken down again. I'm taking you down.
I had this feeling where it's an old wrestling term, but it's the old, he's not getting paid by the hour.
Yeah, well, I think he wanted to finish it in the first round. It just didn't work out that way.
If I was his cornerman, I'd be like, stop effing around and let's get this fight over with.
Well, in the second round, that's exactly what he did.
Thiago Santos beating Elias Terudu, unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-27, 29-27.
I guess the right guy won in terms of the fight, but the right guy didn't win in terms of who we all thought was the more talented and had more upside to him. Because Teodoro was the favorite on the odds when we talked to Brad Taschuk, and should have been better than he was on this day. But Santos just had his number.
Yeah, he just got beat, and as with Paige Vanzant, he's going to take this loss and learn from it. That's all you can do.
Absolutely.
Tim Means knocked out John Howard 21 seconds of the second round.
Speaking of not messing around, and this fight pretty much went the way we all said it was going to go, was that if Howard could hold him down, he'd eke out a decision, and if Means turned it into a brawl, he'd finish him, and that's what he did.
Anything else on the prelim card that caught your eye?
Well, there was a very unfortunate fight between King Kevin Casey and Antonio Carlos Jr., a.k.a. Shoeface. That should have been a fun bout, but Carlos Jr. poked him in the eye, and the fight was stopped to check on it. Casey said he couldn't see, and there was blood trickling out of his eye. So most people get upset when a fight is stopped by a foul and ruled a no contest, but when I saw the blood coming out of his eye, I was like, I'm okay with him telling the ref he can't see, because if there's blood coming out of your eye, you probably can't see.
I thought at first maybe it was like a fingernail or something, you know what I mean? Like something that caused a scratch, or was it just a direct shot with the finger?
I think the finger poked all the way into the eye and burst a blood vessel. I think it was that nasty.
Talking about knockouts, Sergio Moraes beats Omar Akhmedov. Third round 18 in a long fight.
Yeah, it's a very impressive performance for Moraes, and should move him up into getting a bigger and better fight on the main card, because that's his fourth win in a row, and 2 of them have been on pay-per-view, so you got to think at this point he is legitimately a prospect at welterweight.
And 1 or 2 fights that, I was keeping an eye on, Sterling and Eduardo, Sterling winning via submission in the second round, and Philip Nover losing to Zubria
Tukagov.
Split decision, and another loss for Nover here. I don't know about that.
Well, like we said, Fleet Nover is a very unpredictable variable, and as for Aljamain Sterling, I think he's pretty much made his point at bantamweight that either give him a top 5 fight or cut him, because what I hear is that was the last fight on his contract, so if he's not on the main card of a UFC pay-per-view going forward, they should probably just let him go.
Let's move on to the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale, Edgar Mendes. But before we do, Stevie, you're American, I'm Canadian. If I'm going to go to the States and fight and try to win a six-figure contract and live in a house, you think I would be honest in my paperwork.
Yeah, Saul Rogers made a huge mistake here. We don't know the exact nature of the mistake, but he didn't fill out his visa application correctly, omitted some information, possibly he's got a background that would be unsavory, and cleaned up his life and got into mixed martial arts, but he didn't make a full disclosure of that when he filled out his paperwork, and because he lied, he was barred entry to the United States. UFC had to cut ways with him, and he got replaced at the last minute by Ryan Hall.
So Ryan Hall and Artem Lobov in the semi-main event for the lightweight tournament final, six-figure contract. Is it still the Harley-Davidson motorcycle?
I don't know if he got a motorcycle after this, and I don't know if anybody would want him to get a motorcycle, because a lot of people watching that fight were bored and were complaining about it on Twitter, whereas I found it highly entertaining and at times absolutely hilarious. Like when Ryan Hall had the piggyback on Artem Lobov's back when he was searching for a submission, and he's being instructed by the referee to do more or show more, and Hall just looked at him and shrugged his shoulders like, what do you want me to do? I got the body lock triangle, I got his back, what more do you want?
Entertained? Are you not entertained?
Yeah. So to me, that was fun, just watching Ryan Hall basically put on a jiu-jitsu clinic, which was made even more ironic by the fact that he had actually gone over to Europe to train with Lobov and teach him his jiu-jitsu techniques, which is probably why we saw a 3-round fight without a finish, because he had taught Lobov so much that he was actually able to block all the submissions.
So, just so we wrap up the Sunny main, and then we'll talk about the main and the rest of the card. Ryan Hall is the winner, 30-26, 30-26, and 30-27.
Yes, it was much like the Damian Maia fight we're going to talk about a little later. It was a one-sided exhibition of jiu-jitsu.
Frankie Edgar, Chad Money Mendes. I was hoping for a longer fight here, just like the main event of the UFC pay-per-view, but we did not get it, and in this one either.
Wow, this was, I expected fireworks in both of those main events, but I really didn't expect a first-round finish, and we all were kind of leaning towards Edgar having the better cardio and being the slightly better fighter overall, but nobody thought that Chad Mendes was going to get knocked out with one punch. You didn't predict that, I didn't predict that, Brad didn't predict that. We missed the boat on it. We picked Edgar to win, but not by one-punch knockout.
You know, with Mendes, I feel bad because it's going to knock him down a peg or two in the rankings, and he's a very talented fighter. I mean, he's only lost to Aldo McGregor and now Edgar.
Actually, it didn't knock him down at all. He's still number 3. And when you think about it, that's not unfair considering the 3 guys that he lost to are the champion, the number 1, and the number 2 guys. So you could still arguably be number 3 when you look at the 3 guys in a row you lost to.
I would not want to be his opponent in his next fight because he's going to come out with all piss and vinegar.
Well, you know what? That just might end up being Max Blessed Holloway. But we're going to get to Holloway in a little bit.
Tony Ferguson, Edson Barboza, and we saw a sweet Darce choke here in the second round by El Kukui.
Yeah, and it was perfectly applied, too, after he had rocked Edson Barboza. And it looked like he could have finished him standing, and he decided, nope, screw it. Going to the ground, taking the mount. Going to switch to the side, and I'm going to choke him out.
Evan Dunham, Joe Lozon, and I was really shocked by this one. Dunham wins 30-26, 30-26, 30-27.
Yeah, so much for my prediction that Joe Lozon shows up on fight night and always gets fight bonus. I mean, yet Dunham was the favorite going in, and I kind of took exception to that and said that Lozon is the guy that always looks better than what the odds say he does. But this time the odds were actually right, and I totally missed the boat here.
Kawajiri beating Jason Knight, unanimous decision, and Julian Erosa beating Marcin Rozak, split decision.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what we expected with Kawajiri, given that Jason Knight was short notice. The Erosa fight, I don't even remember if we previewed that one. I'm not sure if we knew that one was on the main card.
Juggled around, because, I don't know, it just seemed like, I just think it was moved up, I don't know.
It must have been, because Yeah, I don't remember us ever even talking about it, but it also could have been that they were looking for alternates to replace, and they didn't want to announce the Julian Erosa fight because he might have been the alternate who was coming in to take Saul Rogers' place, and they probably made that decision virtually at the last minute.
Gabriel Gonzaga beating Konstantin Arokin.
I missed this fight because I was at a Christmas party, and I'm told I missed nothing. I've heard this fight was as boring as watching paint dry.
Pretty much. Actually, the entire prelim card wasn't too exciting except for the TKO finish in Herrera at Sanchez.
Yeah, it looks like I came home in time for all the good fights.
He had a good meal, had a good dessert, and came home for the good fights. You lucky bugger, you.
Yeah, that was one heck of a Friday night. I will not complain.
I'll admit this, a little behind the curtain. I saw a picture of the dessert from your Christmas party. Bugger. Like, make everybody else, jealous of your dessert right there. That's not cool.
Hey, it's not my fault they were offering free Kahlua to top the ice cream.
Yeah, that's evil. Not gonna lie.
You know what? We work 12 months a year just to go to one Christmas party, so when you get one, you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about UFC 194, the big show. This is the fight card you wanted to be on if you were in the UFC.
Absolutely, yeah. This was the $10 million gate. This was the record breaker. This was the event.
Let's start at the bottom and start from the bottom. Now we're here, type of thing.
Okay, Drake.
What do you say? Kerr-Mcgee wins by unanimous decision in a fight I think he had to win.
Yeah, to stay relevant, but he'd been off for a couple of years with injuries and problems, so it was nice to see him come back and get a win after all that time.
Yancy Medeiros beat John Makdessi via split decision, and I disagree with this one, not because I'm a homer, but because I think the right guy lost this one.
It was close. There was at least a round that could have gone either way, so I can't call it a robbery. I think either guy winning 2 out of 3 rounds is okay in this case.
Mustaev beating Proctor, the TKO, first round, 154 with knees and punches, and those looked brutal. If you can stop Proctor, good job.
Yeah, here's the thing with Mustafayev. He's got beautiful striking and the world's ugliest haircut. It looks like a bowl was slapped around his head and his mom trimmed it for him. It looks awful.
One thing about his striking, I had this thought, and I've been to a few gyms here or there, and I wonder how many hard heavy bags that this guy goes through in a training session, because those knees, I was just wincing watching them off the screen. I'm like, oh.
Well, it's much harder to destroy a heavy bag than they make it appear in movies, so I wouldn't assume that he's punched his way through any, but he's probably punched his way through some soft tissue of his training partners.
Okay, you're training him today. Oh, crap. Can we not?
Yeah. If somebody said that to me and Mustafayev wanted to train with me, I'd be like, give me the full body suit. Give me the padded belly suit, and give me the 10-ounce gloves, and give me everything.
And then after you take the suit off, the suit does nothing.
Yeah, you're probably still hurting anyway, yeah. I would be on the lookout for Mustafayev. He looks like a guy who is headed on an upward trajectory to the top 15, but we'll see if he can make it all the way there. He's gonna get better competition after beating Joe Proctor, that's for sure.
Leonardo Santos beating Kevin Lee, TKO, 326.
I was really surprised here. Not that Leonardo Santos was that good, because we all knew that he was potentially that good, but I thought after the development we had seen from the Motown superstar Kevin Lee that he was going to continue to improve and possibly pick up his 5th win in a row, but Santos was just a man on a mission with his strikes, and he did not let up.
Alves beating Covington with a guillotine choke, and that was the last fight that did not go all to the judges for a while here.
Yeah, until the co-main event and the main event. But you know what? This is not one of those cases where I'm going to complain about 5 fights going to a decision, because all 5 of the fights you're about to talk about were all exciting fights.
Tisha Torres and Jones Leibarger.
I thought Joan Slyberger acquitted herself quite well for coming in on short notice, but Tisha Torres, the only real difference between the two of them in this fight was that Lyberger was taller and probably a little bit bigger, but Torres was just ferocious. She has the nickname the Tiny Tornado for a reason, so she would just overcome that size and reach advantage by getting in close and firing off these nasty combos that would hurt Lyberger. So Torres delivered in very spectacular fashion and nearly knocked her out a couple of times.
Uriah Faber and Frankie Sands, and Faber delivers again on the prelim card.
Faber looked very good early in the fight. Second round, and especially the third round, was the first time I've ever watched Faber in a later round of a 3-round fight and thought, he looks tired. You usually don't see that from Faber, but he looked like science was giving him everything he was worth, and he was starting to draw a little breath there by the third round.
So we move on to the main card, and Max Holloway against Jeremy Stevens, and Max Holloway does what Max Holloway does.
Well, the story of this is, again, what you, Brad, and I pretty much said it was going to be, that if Stevens could land that one punch, Holloway would be in trouble. But Holloway was just too quick for him, got out of the way of most of the big power shots, and Stevens just didn't have the answer. He couldn't keep up with Holloway and couldn't land that big shot he wanted to, so it just didn't go his way.
Damian Maia and Gunnar Nelson.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, this was a one-sided jiu-jitsu clinic. Maia just, everywhere it went on the ground, he was better than Gunnar. Every time Gunnar would try to transition to a better position, Maia would beat him to it. If they would scramble, Maia would end up on top or end up on his back. If he tried to roll to get out of a mount, he would just end up giving up a possible rear naked choke attempt, and if he'd escape that, then he'd just give up the top mount and Maia would punch him in the face. I mean, this was masterful on Maia's part. If you're anybody in the welterweight division looking at Maia right now, you wouldn't think this guy was one of the longest tenured UFC fighters. You wouldn't think this guy was 38 years old. You would think, my God, this man is a killer. I don't want to go to the ground with him. That's bad news. Match me up with somebody else.
And Yoel Romero beating Jacare Souza. And I actually texted you after this fight saying, bullshit here, Souza won the fight.
Well, Souza won the third round. I'm pretty damn sure of that. I'm absolutely sure that Romero won the first round because he rocked him. He rocked Souza bad enough that he almost finished him. So the difference maker here is how you scored the second round. And it's tempting to say that Souza won the second round, but it was so close that I didn't have a problem with it being a split decision. The only thing that I really had a problem with was there was one point when Souza was going for a takedown and Romero grabbed the fence and blatantly held on to it. I mean, he didn't just accidentally link his fingers with it as he was trying to press off of it. He physically grabbed the cage and held on to it, and the referee stopped the fight, did not award Romero the top position because he got it for grabbing the fence and made them start over standing up. I was okay with that. I was not okay with them not taking away 1 point. And if they had taken away 1 point like they should have, then it would have been scored a draw.
I think it was Tim Kennedy who said on Twitter after this fight something along the lines of the judges were awarded cheaters.
Well, he has a little bit of sour grapes, so I don't know if we can consider that an unbiased opinion because we know what happened when Romero and Kennedy fought.
And after the fight, Romero and Souza held up a Jesus flag?
Yeah, like a Brazilian flag that said Jesus.
Or Jesus. Might be a guy named Jesus in Brazil. We don't know.
Yeah, well, at least we didn't get the Don't Forget Jesus promo again.
Yeah. No, we did not get that. Let's move on to the co-main event for the middleweight title. It was Luke Rockhold against the champion Chris Weidman.
You know what the story of this fight is, Peter?
Redemption?
No. The story of this fight is ill-advised wheel kick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody is going to remember that Chris Weidman threw a wheel kick, missed by a mile, got taken down, and then humbled on the ground by Rockhold in that third round. When you visualize this fight in your mind, years from now, when you remember this pay-per-view, you're going to remember that wheel kick, you're going to remember Rockhold getting the mount, and you're going to remember him busting up Weidman so badly from the mount that you're surprised the fight wasn't stopped in the third round. Like, that was, one person on Twitter described it to me as Herb Dean went from competent referee to completely bloodthirsty sadist, because the fact that he let Weidman take that beating and come back for the fourth round was nothing short of miraculous.
There's something to be said about giving the champion a little bit extra time, but the Simpsons jokes came out on Twitter. It's like, won't somebody please think of the children, or JR's quote about,
somebody stop the damn match!
But Rockhold is your new champ. TKO finished fourth round, 3 minutes, 12 seconds.
Yeah, and a very masterful performance. It was the crowning of the former Strikeforce champion as the UFC middleweight champion, leaving absolutely no question on this particular night as to who the better man was. Now, in a rematch, Weidman may step his game up and may find a way to overcome Rockhold's kicks, because it was really the kick game that left him flummoxed and unable to use his wrestling, because every time he was going to go for a takedown, he was afraid of taking that question mark kick. So he's got to figure out a way to overcome that.
And if you haven't heard about the main event yet, Conor McGregor beating Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, new champ for the featherweights, and I find it interesting because when you have a quick finish like this, everybody goes to how much is the guy getting paid per second. Before he didn't get a win bonus, or he did get, this is not his win bonus payout, just his payout for, it says,
just for showing up.
Yeah, 500,000. Aldo 400,000. So take 500,000 divided by 13. That's how much money you got paid per second.
Like about $45,000 a second without using the calculator.
Go to my left foot. Go to my right foot. That's 80 grand. Left foot, right foot. Okay, feel it.
Well, and here's the thing you really ought to focus on. They each got about 50 grand for simultaneous left hooks. And the difference was that Conor McGregor landed first and landed on the button. And as Jose Aldo was going out, he landed his, and it grazed McGregor. So one punch was absolutely perfect. One was almost perfect, but not quite, and delivered as he was going out cold. And when I saw Aldo go face down, straight down to the mat, I was like, whoa, he just murdered him with one shot. And the referee felt the same way because he got in like one hammer fist before it was waved off.
Yeah, McCarthy earned his pay there for saving Aldo's life.
Yes, Aldo was not defending himself, not at all. He was out cold out. He didn't know where he was when Conor McGregor came over to give him a hug.
Faber, because of his experience, got a huge payout as well, $300,000. That includes his win bonus of $150,000. But Conor McGregor did get one of the performance of the night bonuses. So.
Well earned too. As he said at the post-fight press conference, timing beats power and precision beats speed.
Well, also, you talked about the $10 million gate, which broke the record, U.S. record, and the attendance broke the record as well from Nevada at 16,516.
Yes. Everything about this broke records, including the fastest finish in a UFC title fight, eclipsing the previous record held by Rowdy Ronda Rousey. So, a spectacular performance in the main event. The heralding of a new champion, the changing of the guard in 2 weight classes. This was an epic 3 nights of fights.
And now we gotta relax and not cover UFC. Oh, wait, there is a UFC show this week.
Yep, and there's a World Series of Fighting show on Friday night as well, so if you thought you'd had enough MMA last week, get ready for round 4 and round 5.
Let's stay on the UFC tip here with Rafa dos Anjos defending the lightweight title against Donald the Cowboy Cerrone.
Yes, a rematch, actually. These two have met before.
Yeah, And Cerrone's looking for revenge.
People are talking about how he looks different now in the drug testing era than he used to. And Cerrone, since we all know this guy likes to party and drink beer and always has a tough time making weight because of that, we're probably going to see the same Donald Cerrone we always see. I don't think we're really going to see a difference between Cerrone before drug testing and Cerrone after. He's probably the same dude no matter what. So, he had his number the first time. So what would make you think that he wouldn't have his number the second time, especially if Dos Anjos is that affected by the drug testing?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, with Cerrone, I mean, he's making good money right now. I don't think he's drinking Natty Light.
The odds makers do have Dos Anjos as minus 220, but I'm still leaning towards the Cowboy at this point.
Yeah, I would say the Cowboy as well.
All right, so what do you think about this heavyweight bout between Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos?
Okay, the older fans of this podcast will love this quote, but where's the beef? Because these are two big boys here, and how can you not pick Dos Santos here?
Well, he is the minus 360 favorite. But Overeem, he has that same thing that we just said about Jeremy Stevens, where it only takes one punch. Now, if you get past the first round with Overeem, he's toast, because the guy has no cardio with all that muscle that he carries. So he's not going to last the second or the third round, and if you get past that first round, he's toast. But one punch can make the difference in this fight, especially with as much muscle as these guys are packing.
Pray to God that this card comes back with all clean drug tests.
Yes, indeed. But they're all being tested by USADA now, so if there was any test failures, we would have heard about it. But anyway, the line on this one is minus 360 for JDS, plus 300 for Overeem.
Because you got Overeem, and you got the next guy here, Nate Diaz, against Michael Johnson.
A little bit longer on the odds for this one. Minus 470 for Johnson, plus 375 for Diaz. That feels exactly right to me. The Diaz brothers are losing their relevance to me in general, and Nate Diaz was the lesser of the two of them to begin with.
You know, I hope Johnson, after he wins, goes over to Diaz as the referee gets between them and basically goes, "Who's scared now, homie?"
I guess.
Because Diaz is going to be trash talking all the way at the weigh-ins and all the way leading up. You know what I mean? Like, it's Diaz being Diaz here.
Yeah, but again, he was the lesser of the two Diaz. If anybody's going to pull that off, it's going to be Nick, not Nate.
But we've seen Nate do his fair share, especially in the crowd.
Yeah, a little bit. But I also think Johnson doesn't even need to taunt him after he gets the win. He can be the classier man and just walk away from it knowing that he's moved up in the rankings and that Diaz will be a footnote.
Well, speaking of footnotes, this fight will not fall in that category with Randa Marcos against an Invicta fighter who's making her debut.
Let me help you with the name here. Karolina Kowalczyk.
She's 7-0. Invicta was her last stop, and now she's debuting in the UFC. And Marcos, boy, that's a tough draw in her first fight.
Right. Marcos almost won the Ultimate Fighter. She almost became the UFC's inaugural strawweight champion, and she is the favorite by virtue of knowledge of her skill set. Minus 175, 2 plus 155 for the newcomer. But being that she is 7-0, you got to take this one seriously and not think she's a pushover.
No, I'm going to go with Marcos, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina wins her debut fight either.
No. And we have an even closer line for Miles Jury and Charles Oliveira. Minus 125 for the Fury Jury and plus 105. Barely over the Mendoza line there.
I'd lean towards Oliveira, just the coin told me to.
Duke Bronx is a hell of a fighter. You don't ever want to get in a slugfest with him, because odds are it might not go your way. The only guy that's been able to beat him recently is the aforementioned Holloway.
Well, speaking of fights that, I think the odds are going to be close. C.B. Dalloway and Nate Marquardt, because
you'd be wrong.
Really?
C.B. Dalloway is the minus 360 favorite.
Oh, come on. No way that high.
I hate to say I agree, but I don't think Nate Marquardt is quite at that top level anymore after losing 5 out of his last 6 fights.
Well, he's going in here with house money. I always like saying that with fighters in this situation because he loses here, he's done. He knows he's done. He's going to come out and throw everything he can in that cage. And Dalloway's got to be prepared for that. And Nate, in the past, has surprised people.
I'm not saying there's no way, no how. I'm just saying, if I look at where the two career trajectories are going, CB's is up and Marquardt's is down.
This is why you fight the fights. Sarah Kaufman against Jermaine Randami.
No, that got changed to Valentina Shevchenko.
Oh, did it? Oh, I didn't get that memo.
Yeah, Durandamy pulled out due to an injury, so Shevchenko is taking her place. She is making her UFC debut, and she's not a former Invicta fighter, so we don't know anything about her from there, but she fought last in Legacy and got a unanimous decision over Jan Finney. She's 9-1 overall.
I'm still going with Kaufman.
And the odds makers are as well, minus 220 to Kaufman. Plus 180 for Shevchenko.
Tamden McCrory fights Josh Salmon. I like Salmon in that fight.
Well, the odds makers have him minus 180, but never count out the Barn Cat.
Danny Castillo and Nick Lentz, one of Dana's favorite fighters.
Minus 130 for Lentz, plus 100 for Castillo. Coin flip.
Yeah, I'd go with Lentz.
Pretty much all the rest of these fights, if you want to talk about them, they're all coin flips. Ehlers and Miller, minus 140 to plus 110. Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, minus 210 to plus 168. Vicente Luque to Hader Hassan, minus 105 to minus 125. There's a lot of coin flips on the rest of this card.
Yeah, let's just move on. But overall, good card on Fox, though. Main event starts at 8 o'clock.
Yes, indeed. Don't be late.
Yeah, don't be late for a very important date, and we're not talking Star Wars.
Right.
Because, yeah, everyone's lining up for that right now. There's some people who've lined up for that movie for, 2 weeks now.
I'm over the hype at this point. I'd rather not go on opening night and deal with the crowd and all the crazy fans. I would just rather wait.
Did you see the what do you call those? The corner cams from the UFC pay-per-view this past weekend?
No.
They showed the reaction shots from the corners of Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo.
If this happened during the pay-per-view, I don't remember it.
Well, they showed this on the highlight shows because they can't show clips from the fight, but they showed the corners.
Okay.
So you saw McGregor's first, and everyone just jumping up and down for joy. Then you go to Aldo's. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's probably on YouTube and a bunch of places right now. But there's one cornerman for Aldo who breaks down and is crying in a matter of 2 seconds from calm to, oh my god, and it looks like he's bawling into his hat.
Well, Aldo looked like he was crying into a towel after the fight was over, so...
Yeah. No. But then you look behind the corner and you can see Joanna Champion standing up in shock, like, oh my god, and then she's tweeting something. And then they do another replay of it, and on the right-hand side of the screen you could see Bruce Buffer. If his jaw was any lower, he'd be on the desk.
Well, nobody's ever done this to Jose Aldo, so wouldn't you be in shock too?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But it was kind of the contrast. You could definitely go A to B, and to see other people. There's another name I can't recall off the top of my head, but there's another name. It was T.J. Dillashaw. He was freaking out too, but holy crap, type of thing. So I like these corner cams because it shows the realism's the wrong word, but it shows the perspective we don't get to see on the broadcast.
Now, speaking of T.J. Dillashaw, you did hear Uriah Faber say that he's willing to face T.J. Dillashaw.
Wasn't like he's putting the friendship aside or something?
Well, he said there's really no friendship anymore because he feels like he gave Dillashaw everything he has, and then he betrayed him and went with somebody else, and now there's no longer friendship to put aside. Now they can just tell the age-old story.
Yeah, and let's move on to the news. We got lots of news here, and the one.
What about World Series of Fighting 26? Are we doing that at the end?
You're right. I thought we were going to... Yeah, you're right. Sorry. I just got caught up in the news from that cam. I thought it would be easy to transition to that. But you're right. World Series of Fighting is this weekend, and Jay Kuhn fights Tyrone Spong and Lance Palmer.
No. Wrong. No.
All right.
Tyrone Spong is medically withdrawn from this card. He was replaced by Clinton Williams.
Really?
Yep. It's like the third or fourth time in a row that Tyrone Spong has pulled out of a fight now.
Injury or?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think he probably is legitimately injured, but I also think the fact that he keeps getting injured every time World Series of Fighting tries to book him, you could sort of read some subtext into that.
Is Lance Palmer still defending his title?
Yes, that's the main event. Lance Palmer and Alexandre de Almeida.
Ooh.
10-1 versus 17-5. One of the most successful fighters in World Series of Fighting against a guy who got his title shot winning a prelim fight a couple of shows ago.
Didn't you talk to him a few weeks ago?
Palmer? Yes, indeed. I interviewed him. The article should be up on Mania this week.
Do you think Palmer will make the jump to UFC?
There's been some speculation about that. I believe Brad brought that up on our show last week. But right now, I still think that Lance Palmer is the big fish in the little pond, and he likes it that way. And unless his fight contract expires and UFC makes him an offer, he has no reason to jump right now because he can pretty well dominate in World Series fighting and get himself ready for that competition in UFC where the top of that featherweight division is a murderer's row of killers. So I'd take my sweet time getting ready for that too if I was him.
Any other big fights you want to talk about on the World Series card?
Well, let's see. I'll just run down the main card for you. I've got Palmer winning the main event, probably by a rear naked choke. I don't think it'll go the distance. Co-main event is a lightweight showcase fight with Ozzy Dugulubgov and Nick Heron-Webb. Heron-Webb is a little bit of an unknown quantity here. He's 18-6, but all his fights are in Alaska, so we don't really know how he's going to do outside of that realm. Not that Alaska isn't a breeding ground for talent, but it's a different platform. It's a bigger stage. I think Dugulubgov probably uses superior striking to win that fight by TKO. But like you said earlier, that's why they fight the fights. We've also got the gentleman Josh Hill, 12-1. His only loss coming in a title fight against Marlon Moraes. He'll be taking on a Dagestani prospect in Bekbalat Magomedov, 16-0, undefeated. I think Hill will make it a very competitive fight, but I think the hype is real for Magomedov. I see him going to a unanimous decision by outplaying him. And we've also got a fight with Ruthless Robbie Peralta at 18-6, taking on Shayman Moraes at 7-1. The only fight Shayman Moraes lost was a title fight against Marlon Moraes. Peralta had a run in Strikeforce and UFC and acquitted himself pretty well. Got a few big wins, but lost his last two, including a decision to Clay the Carpenter Guida, at which point UFC released him. I think he'll probably be a man on a mission here, and he'll be out to prove something, so I'm going to give him the split decision win in this fight.
All right, so we'll talk some news?
Yes, let's do.
So, there's talk that Conor might jump to lightweight.
Well, did you watch the post-fight press conference?
Did he run that press conference, or was I imagining things?
He did. He took over the podium and ran it himself, and what he said was he's got a few weeks off now to enjoy the holidays, to bask in his accomplishments, and to see what happens in the other weight classes. And he's going to decide whether or not he wants to jump up from featherweight to lightweight once he sees how everything else plays out. But he reassured everybody that he wouldn't vacate the featherweight title if he did that. He would be a 2-weight class champion, which is not what Dana White said. Dana White said that he could vacate the featherweight title to get a lightweight title shot. but according to McGregor, he's going to keep the belt and become champion in both.
Yeah, basically, Dana, there's precedent for this where you can cash in your title to move up in weight if that's what you want.
Right, but he doesn't want to. He wants to keep the title and he wants to win a second title.
So it looks like we're going to get Edgar and McGregor, but Aldo wants the next shot, saying his career speaks for itself.
It kind of does. This one loss, as shocking and as violent and as one-sided as it was, doesn't spell the end of Aldo's career. Everything he's done up till this point says he's still a contender. He's still in the mix. He's not going away. I would give Edgar the next shot for sure, but I would say Aldo is in the wings after him.
So, I mean, other than that, I mean, not much news over the last little bit. I guess everyone's trying to recover from the 3 days of fights, but Chris Weidman did have a comment about his first career loss, saying it's what he needed and deserved.
All right, well, hopefully he'll come back better, like you said earlier.
I hate to say it like this because he just lost the title, but that comment proves, he's taking it like a champ.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I got a little more Conor McGregor news for you.
Let me guess, another tattoo.
Nope, he's going to star in a Triple X movie with Vin Diesel.
Oh, that sounded wrong first time I heard that. Okay, never mind.
Well, you remember that Vin Diesel played a secret agent called Triple X.
When you said that, I'm like, wait, what? Oh, that caught me off guard, Stevie.
All right.
But, great crowd there this past weekend at the UFC show. We're going to have another great crowd for the Fox card.
Oh, I got one more news note for you. Guess who's number one in the pound-for-pound rankings now? Don't cheat. Legitimately guess. Don't go looking it up.
I'm thinking DJ.
You are correct, sir.
That's who I would pick, yeah.
Yeah, he moved up to the number one spot, and Aldo dropped way, way down.
Until John Jones fights a fight, he'll go up or down, but for now it's got to be DJ. No one I can think of, because Aldo got beat, Rousey got beat. McGregor, I mean, yeah, you could put him as number 2 or 3, but I think DJ is quicker than McGregor.
Yeah, and Jones is number 2, and DJ is number 1.
There you go. All right, so what's on tap for Thursday night AMP? I heard there was a pay-per-view this past weekend.
Well, you know what? I didn't watch it, and quite frankly, what happened on Raw made it irrelevant to watch it anyway. So we'll just talk about what happened on Raw, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
There you go. Any special guests lined up?
Not this week. It's getting close to the holiday. It gets a little harder to line up guests when it's almost the holiday.
That's true. And next week will be, I guess you could say, our Christmas show, and then the week after that will be our anniversary show, because it's been a few years and the show is about to hit a birthday.
Yeah, so you want to line up a guest for the anniversary show, I'll leave that up to you.
See what I can do.
All right. So that's it for Glove Up or Shut Up. What do we always say at the end of every show, Peter?
Stevie J, I'm Peter H, the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening. And as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.